Alright, today we are working with section 1-8 Algebra, which is working with equations. This week we've been working on expressions, and yesterday we did function tables, and now we're going to introduce the equations and what makes, or what the difference is, I should say, between the expressions and an equation. So up top here there are a few examples. And what I want you to do before we get started is just to simply hit pause and copy down this information into your math notebook. So go ahead and hit pause and do that real quick. Alright, now that we have all of this in your notes, you're going to kind of see what types of equations we're talking about. An equation, first of all, needs to have an equal sign. And this is what we're dealing with, is the equal sign for this particular problem. And on one side it has an expression, the other side has an expression as well. This is simply 9, this is simply 2 plus 7, has that operation sign, and 9 does equal 9. Now this is more of what we've been talking about with the expressions, containing a variable, an operation sign, and the number. And then on this side it has the 9, and in this case we're trying to find the value of x and what x would equal, which in this case, if we solve this mentally, we can simply ask ourselves the question, 2 plus what equals 9? Well, 7 plus 2 equals 9. Over here, again, we always start on the side with the variable. So then we end up asking ourselves the question, what minus 6 will equal 4? And you say, well, we're going in the wrong direction. Well, the issue is we must always start on the side with that variable and work left to right. So k minus 6, what number in this position would give us a positive 4? Well, in this case, it would have to be 10. Okay? Not 2, because 2 minus 6 would give me a negative 4. That's where sometimes we run into some issues. And once we begin today, we're going to be doing them solving these mentally, but in the near future, we'll be solving these algebraically. This is the kind of the first step, getting closer to solving these, keeping that equation balanced. So the answer to this is k equals 10. Okay. And then on this one here, 15 divided by what gives me 3, or equals 3. And in this case, it would be 5, because 15 divided by 5 equals 3. So m equals 5. So let's look at some of our key words. And again, some of the key words or definitions to what an equation is simply saying that an equation has an equal sign. It also has a variable. And again, we've talked about what variables are, and that they're the letters that represent any number. And then we have also an operation sign. Which would be add, subtract, multiply, or divide, any of those 4. Then we have the equal sign, as we talked about up here. This is the equal sign is what separates one side, side 1, from the other side. Okay, side 2. And the variable, it can be on either side. Okay, it can be on either side, just as we saw with this particular problem here compared to this problem up here. Solve, what does that word or what does it mean? It's simply asking you to get a solution to the variable. So when you see the word solve, you're solving for the variable. And a solution, again, solution, if you see that, it says find the solution to the equation. It's basically saying to solve. Okay, that's the solution. And again, the solution is for the variable. So as we look at this, it is quite obvious that everything on an equation pretty much revolves around that variable, because ultimately that is what you're trying to find. So let's look at the next problem, or the next page. And this is the question for this is simply asking you to identify the solution of each equation from the list given. Well, you say, well, what list is given? Right here is a semicolon. That semicolon is separating the equation, which is this, and these are my possible answers. I don't know why they always put the semicolon there, but they always do, and it always confuses students. When we look down here, it looks like a whole bunch of numbers in a line. There is a separation to these, okay? And that separation is by that semicolon, and these are the three possible answers that would be possible for that variable. So I'm going to let you go ahead and hit pause and solve these two equations, and then knowing that these two, or that these three items right here, are the possible answers. So go ahead and hit pause and solve those. Alright, so now we have to ask ourselves the question working from left to right, and we can say, well, 9 plus what gives me or equals 17? And one way of doing that is simply taking one of these numbers and plugging them in. 9 plus 7 is 16. 9 plus 8 does equal 17. So W equals 8. Now we'll look at this, and again, working left to right, D minus 11 equals 5. So what number minus 11 would equal 5? Well, it has to be a positive number. And so this first number has to be larger than 11. So all three of these are. So we'll simply plug those in. 14 minus 11 equals 3. And 15 minus 11 equals 4. So then the 16 minus 11 equals our 5. So the answer to that is 16. And 8 is our answer to this. Again, if you're having questions on these, please feel free to write those questions down and bring them to class for tomorrow for more discussion. Now the question for this simply says solve each equation mentally. So now we don't have any choices. Now we've got to go through here and do a little bit of critical thinking as we go to solve for that variable. So go ahead, and I'm going to let you do letter C and D. So go ahead and hit pause. Alright, once again, working left to right, we always start on the side of the equation with the variable, because that is what we are trying to solve for, so that it's going to be k equaling a number. Now, this number again, since this is positive, this number is going to have to be larger than 25. So we can start looking at those numbers, something that's going to be larger than that, and we can try 50 maybe. So if we try 50, and 50 minus 25 is going to give me 25. So we need to then drop that down by 5, so then this is going to be 45, and 45 minus 25 does indeed equal 20. Okay. Now I'm hoping that you're beginning to see some similarities between our answers. Whoops, I said that wrong. That equals 20. My answer, however, is 45. My apologies. 45 is your answer. That's what k equals. Okay? I'm hoping that as you start to work through these, you're going to see some similarities between this number and this number and this operation sign. When we look at this operation sign right here, you're going to find that if you do the opposite of that with the other number, then you're going to end up getting the answer. So since this says subtract, we're going to add those two numbers together, 25 and 20, and you're going to get 45. Whoops, didn't record it. You're adding those two numbers together to get 45. That's my answer. Okay, so now let's look at this problem. And this says multiply. Well, if we were to divide both of these numbers, divide both sides by 12, you would get 2. And if we were to take 2 and plug it into k, does 12 times 2 equal 24? Absolutely does. So this is the other way of solving these equations rather than trying to solve them mentally. Or you can again ask yourself the question, 12 times what will give me 24? Well, 12 times 2 gives me 24. Okay? Some of you don't always know those, so that's why I'm showing you the other way. And when I say the other way, that is truly solving this algebraically. And this is the step that we're taking, that we will be taking further as we progressively work through this school year. So you're going to see us doing a lot more of solving equations in this manner, because not all of these equations are going to be easily solved mentally. In fact, when we throw some decimals and fractions into this problem, it becomes a lot more complicated, and that is why we need to learn to solve them algebraically. So let's look at the next slide. It says solve again, each one mentally. You can use either method to solve this. Remember, inverse operation, doing the opposite, will help you get the value of the variable if you are stumped. Or you can again solve them mentally and progress from there. Let's go ahead and hit pause and solve these. Alrighty, you have again, if you're going to solve this algebraically, since it says you're going to divide by 3, we're going to multiply both sides by 3. And when you do that, we're going to get d equals 6 times 3 is 18. Let's check it. Does 18 divided by 3, does that equal 6? Yes, it does. So let's look at this problem. 6b, again, we have to start on the side with the variable because that's what we're trying to solve. And this says 6 times b, therefore we could divide both sides by 6. And we get b by itself because 6 divided by 6 does equal 1. And 1 times b will equal b because 1 times any number is that number. And then 54 divided by 6, that is 9. And then we can plug that in. Does 6 times 9, does that equal 54? It absolutely does. Therefore, we found our answer to be 9, equaling the variable b. Again, if you have questions, you can certainly take note of them and bring them to class for tomorrow. Some other things you need to remember: they are asking you to do it mentally, and I realize that I'm showing you some other ways to doing this besides the mental part, which is ultimately where we are leading, is solving these algebraically. You can do it either way. I am more than happy to let you work them out in this manner, because that's where we are going to be leading you in the near future to make certain that you know how to solve them algebraically. Hopefully you find that this lesson's fairly easy for you. If it again is not, please make note and we will talk about it tomorrow. Have a great evening, and hope you're enjoying my big campus.